that every time I'm stressed, this is actually a challenge. It's a chance to become greater. It's a chance to be closer to Allah. Just set a timer, 90 minutes, and just work. That's how you get into a flow state. You're gonna get to a state of total immersion where you even forget the concept of time. When you actually align yourself with your biology, you unlock new levels of productivity. Right? You realize that you don't need these productivity hacks. You don't need these quick tips.
Living life with design has many, many components, among that being spiritual, performance, biological, physiological. Today's podcast, we're going to be talking about how you can work with your biology rather than fighting against it. Because a lot of entrepreneurs think that they can fight through bad sleep, overstimulation, and all these different things and still think that they can function at high levels of peak performance. So inshallah, today we're with Fawaz and he's going to be explaining how you can actually work with your biology. So really stay tuned to this one, and I would really recommend having a pen and paper for this one. Bismillah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I think this podcast is super important. It's something that I had to realize, and I think we should all realize, right, that Allah created us a certain type of way, all right? And it's important that we accept that Allah created us with certain limitations, right? Allah created certain things that allow us to be able to do more, and certain things that if we do, we're going to get a lot less out of ourselves, right? The point of what I'm trying to break down is you need to understand in what way you were created in order to be able to function the most effectively, right? You need to understand where the barakah lies, where the leverage lies, right? And the highest leverage thing you can actually do a lot of the times is go and play to your biology rather than playing against it. Playing against your biology is literally like swimming against an uphill current. No matter how hard you try, you're always going to be affected by it. So it's actually more important to understand how you are as an individual, how your mind works, how your body works, in order for you to be able to get the most effective way out of that. Now, how do I break this down? I'll give you a similar analogy, right? If I just call my sheikh and I ask for halal and haram fatwas, right? It's much more different for if I study the deen and I understand the mas'ala, for example, the issue myself, and then I'm able to come to do my own ijtihad and understand why something is permissible versus impermissible, right? And I'm able to leverage that information that if I find myself in another situation again, I can find the answer. That person will always be much more effective who understands his deen rather than the one who simply calls the sheikh and asks for halal and haram or what's the ruling on this question or this issue. So my point is, we all need to understand our biology in order to get the most out of ourselves. When you're able to understand a lot more about yourself, why you're performing at certain times, why you're not performing, even though while you want to perform, you're not able to perform, even though when you know you should, you can't, or you feel like you can't. We have to understand where all of these things come from. And that's what we're here to do, inshallah, today.
But look, I'll be honest, right? And I'm sure everyone's going to see this podcast and be like, I know this is important to understand, but I think even before we go into the technicals, is this like one of those things that's just like, I have to study it like a PhD student and I'm just studying all these theories and concepts and principles? It's like, it's boring.
Okay, I agree. Like, quite frankly, there's a lot of these terms that you don't need to know, right? Even when I'm walking my clients for a lot of these things, like, I just give them like the stupidest way of explaining it so they understand, all right? They don't need to actually study the science behind it. They don't need to understand fully. They just need to understand how it works. That's my job, okay? To understand these terms, the deeper meanings, how they link the biology, etc. But it's good to get a general understanding of how it works. The deeper essence, right? Like, for example, the average person, they just need to know if the hadith is sahih or not, right? And the tafsir, etc. But who needs to go and find out how to find out if a hadith is sahih, the isnad, etc., making sure everything is good? Not everyone's going to be able to do that, right? And not everyone needs to. So that's the point of why we're here, to just bring an understanding that will genuinely benefit them, but without going far too deep, because I always try to avoid that, right? But I'm going to give you a PhD on you, inshallah, which is the only PhD you need.
Perfect. And even think another practical example we looked at, because as we know, we like to look at things very, very holistically. And when I say holistic, meaning we're taking the whole picture. And an example was, I was with my Ustad Hudayfa, and at the time, he was working with an Umrah company. And when he was bringing all the students on, the people for the Umrah, he was like, yeah, let's stay up till late and then get up early for tahajjud. But you realize everyone is up and everyone is just so tired because you fought against the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually created you, and even Ibn Uthaymeen was asked, how does a person ensure that he gets up for Fajr and he's awake? a lot of the time, the advice he gave was just actually following your biology. Like, just because you're doing something for the deen or you're doing something for business doesn't mean you go against what, like, science is one of those things where it doesn't contradict the deen necessarily, right?
No, science just, in fact, if you, the more you study science, the more you realize, like, the deen is haqq, and the deen is the truth and nothing but it, right? And this is what I'm saying, like, when you learn how to work with your biology, you're going to become successful in every aspect of your life, right? With business, with your deen, etc. And that's what I told you, right? It goes, subhanAllah, it's funny that studying this performance and studying the biology, as you know, I've become a nerd again, right? The super nerd, just sits down all day, read the books, understand them, breaking it down. And wallahi, it's only proved to me more and more so how to actually leverage myself to actually get more out of the deen, to be able to do more ibadah, to become the better Muslim, etc., as well as in business and every realm of my life, right? So I think that's such an important point, that at the end of the day, one thing you have to understand is, like, this isn't just about like feeling good or being healthy. This is actually how to optimize your performance, right? It's turning your body and your brain into like this elite system that actually allows you to be able to dominate your business, your life, your deen, absolutely everything. But you see, the problem is a lot of people fight with their biology instead of understanding it and designing their life around that biology, all right? So today we're here to understand why people are always constantly tired, all right? Why people are always constantly demotivated, why they're constantly always distracted, underperforming in certain areas of their life, right? So we want to break down in this podcast, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, how to actually master your biology, how to work with your natural rhythms and operate to peak performance in every sector. Now, I do want to make something clear. I'm not saying you can't enhance your biology. We will show you how to do that in that podcast. I'm not saying, your max is you can lift 5 kgs. No, that actually goes against the whole concept of biology, because part of biology is what? Being neuroplasticity, which is what you becoming better and growing, forming new neural connections that allow your brain to do more things than it was able to do. So we will talk about that, inshallah. All right?
Okay. I think even before we go a little bit, I know obviously I'm going to have to stretch the intro a bit just because it is a bit of a technical podcast today. But one thing I think we have to understand is that there are certain rhythms, certain natural things which Allah has already created us with. The whole purpose of this here is to actually utilize that. When it comes to energy, people think it's random. A lot of the time they think that it's random. I'm just feeling tired. I don't know why, I just feel tired. There are things that you've been creating. If you don't know how to leverage that in the most effective way possible, you're never going to be able to really unlock that peak performance, inshallah.
100%. When you actually align yourself with your biology, you unlock new levels of productivity. All right, you realize that you don't need these productivity hacks. You don't need these quick tips. You genuinely need to align yourself with your biology, and you start to be able to do things that you never even thought was possible. Right? It's about creating harmony between your body, your mind, and your spirit to achieve that next level of excellence. That's what we're after here. Okay.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We'll get started straight away now, inshallah. First of all, why is this the most important thing for peak performance specifically?
Okay, because biology dictates everything, all right? How you are, all right? Your focus, your decision making, your energy, your spiritual self, every single thing. Your body is an interconnected system, just like we talked about with your business, right? You have to understand it's a system. If one part is off, your sleep, maybe your nutrition, whatever it is, you start to notice that everything else starts to become affected. Does that make sense? All of these things are connected. So physically, you start to feel exhausted. Mentally, you don't have your ability to focus, right? Spiritually, right? You struggle to have khushu in your salah, etc., because you're so tired, right? And the worst part is most people don't even realize it, but the majority of people, because they're not working with their biology, they're probably achieving 40% of the capacity that they could be, because they've normalized exhaustion, right? They've normalized being tired, right?
Okay, subhanAllah. And that, and we see a lot of like entrepreneurs, because we've talked about this in many podcasts, but they really have these like really false beliefs of hustle and just overworking and just pushing through their work days. And they're just basically really working and running through lag mode. A lot of the time they're just, kind of like zombies, basically a lot of the time, and you're like, okay, well, you made 6 figures, but your life is miserable because what? You're just fighting against the way Allah created you, subhanAllah. So let's look at like certain rhythms, kind of how Allah created, because we're talking about, okay, well, they're going against it. What are some things that we've actually been created to follow, following the wave, basically?
Okay, you actually have a natural circadian and ultradian rhythm, right? So your circadian rhythm is sort of your body's internal clock that like regulates sleep, wake cycles, while ultradian rhythms are more like these sort of shorter cycles of like focus throughout the day, right? So you kind of have this situations like, for example, with sleep, with your circadian rhythm, like we talked about, right? So generally speaking, the night is for rest and the day is for what? Is for livelihood, for you to go be active, for you to get things done, okay? But even within that, your ultradian rhythm talks about within this day, you have these cycles of like energy and focus, right? So like before I go much deeper into it, for example, like the ultradian rhythm will be like these 90-minute like spurts of energy and focus, right? So you have really focus and a lot of energy and focus for 90 minutes, right? Then you need to take a sufficient break before what? That energy and focus can be peaked again. Does that make sense? Start to renew again. So for example, like working 3 hours straight without having any sort of break is ineffective. Completely, it's ineffective. And again, it's working against your biology. And then you have like obviously your dopamine system, which is crucial for motivation and reward. It plays a big part in terms of your energy peaks, etc. So if you don't understand how these things work, it's like a lot of the times it's like, you know, trying to drive a Ferrari that has flat tires. Although the machine is amazing, and wallahi, we've been created as amazing beings, but we need to leverage how we work, right, to actually get the best. It's like, no matter how powerful a MacBook is, right, on 1%, you don't get much power out of it. It starts to lag, things start to become frozen, etc. Right? So we need to learn how to actually gain a lot more from it. Does that make sense?
Okay, so let's dive a little bit deeper now. So when you start to understand kind of your biology and how you work, you start to see kind of where your unique strengths and weaknesses are. And one of the things I wanted to ask you is, when it comes to all these different things, is this unique for each person, or is it kind of like there's certain principles that we're embedding here?
Yeah, there's general laws, right, for every single person. Of course, every person is slightly different. And I will teach you how to understand yourself, your biology as well, and how to actually grow your biology. Like, for example, like, you know, when I was working with my clients at the beginning, I started telling them, look, just work for every 90 minutes and then take a break for 20 minutes, right? And majority of them, they were unable to do 90 minutes, right? Why? Because they've gotten so used to what? This level of working for less, right? This level of working a lot less time. Does that make sense?
No.
So they've gotten used to that, like, 20 minutes, pick up my phone, 30 minutes, pick up my phone. So you can slowly start to grow that 90 minutes up to like anywhere from like 90 minutes, they say, to about 2 hours. You know, anything after that, you should take some sort of break, a short break. But you can, of course, grow it. But there's general laws.
Okay, so we're talking about these things here. Are we kind of talking about timing these rhythms? Okay, well, I know it's this time, and then I'm going to... How does it exactly work?
It's not just about timing. It's actually about understanding that the different systems, how the different systems in your body interact. Your nervous system, right? Your different systems, your immune systems, they play crucial roles in how you actually perform daily. If you ignore any one of these systems, a lot of the times it can lead to failures in your overall performance, right? So if you want to actually be able to work with your biology, you need to think from a holistic approach. You need to integrate every aspect of your biology into your daily routine, right? So my point is, and people are always like, yeah, but that's way too much for me to think about. It's not. If you create a system and you only do it once, then it's just again and again and again, right? So a lot of these times it's like saying, but building a business is tough. Yeah, in the beginning, right? Understanding every aspect of business, but then it gets to a stage where it runs, and to scale, then you have to do the next thing and next thing and next thing, right? So it's very, very similar. When you actually stop and actually seek to understand it, every aspect of your biology, and you holistically get this view, you start to think of every single element, how other things affect other things. Meaning, I don't stuff anything into my body. I don't play with the time I sleep. I make sure I'm, taking care of myself physically. I don't overload my mind, because I understand that one of those things affect all of those things. Does that make sense?
No. Okay, so let's now go a little bit into, we always talk about when it comes to building any systems, there's the inputs, there's the system itself, and there's the output, feedback, and we also have the environment itself, right? So let's kind of talk a little bit about kind of how the environment and the habits can influence kind of the way your genetics actually works, right? By, kind of adopting the right lifestyle choices, you can actually enhance your biological potential, you can say.
Okay, طيب. So this is the study of epigenetics, right? So how your society, etc., influences, and you're 100% right. It's empowering to realize that while you can't change your DNA, you can certainly influence how it works, right? You can't change how your genetic makeup, but you can influence how it works. This means if you're able to optimize sleep, nutrition, stress management, and all these things, you're going to see significant performance to your well-being, right? Human beings react certain ways under stress. Does that mean they can't train themselves to endure more? Of course not, they can. So this is where you're actually training, right? And enhancing and bettering and influencing how your genetics works, right? You can't change how it works, but you can influence it for growth. Does that make sense?
Okay. So when we are talking about kind of like, stress levels, cognitive load, deep work, a lot of that comes down to kind of like energy levels and stress. And you mentioned before that there is a hormone which is responsible for this type of thing, which is cortisol.
Of course.
Talk a little bit about how that works, and ADHD and dopamine, all these different things.
Okay, type. So cortisol is simply a hormone that's referred to as the stress hormone, right? So because it's involved in the body's response to stress, right? So it helps regulate your metabolism, reduce inflammation and assist with memory formulation, right? And also, you have many things, right? From that, you have, DHAE, right? You have different things that come from all of these things, right? So if you look at it, entrepreneurs that often are work underneath high stress, high pressure environments, maybe to innovate their business or to scale their business, etc. This environment can lead to chronic stress and elevated cortisol levels, right? And when you have high cortisol levels for a super long time without a rest period, what happens is للأسف you actually your decision making starts to become far impaired, very, very much impaired. Meaning what? You aren't coming up with your ability to see if decisions and make effective decisions. It's not as good anymore, right? So it's you're strained. You're not as effective. It's like a knife. It loses its sharpness. Does that make sense? Right? You have memory issues, meaning what? You start to notice that you forget a lot. And by the way, the majority of the entrepreneurs, I'm telling you, spend time with them, you'll see this. They genuinely can't remember things. They deal with a lot of brain fog, right? So all of this comes from what? Comes from that high cortisol level, and it never comes down. It's always stress, right?
But you mentioned in the last podcast that stress is actually something good for entrepreneurs.
100%. Stress isn't bad, okay? People need to understand that the periodization basically means taking certain, there's periods to how you should be as a human being, right? Any entrepreneur who never has stress will never grow. Stress is directly responsible for growth. You can't grow without stress. If you look at your muscles, right? How do your muscles actually grow, become stronger? When they're being broken down, okay? Stress, they're being stressed, and then there's a rest period which allows them to grow. And this is where we say stress plus rest equals growth. Meaning after stress, you have to have a period of rest and then you become growth. And then what happens is you put more stress, rest again, and then growth. Each time it's growing more. Why? Because after the rest period, the thing that you've isolated to stress is becoming stronger. Right? So to give you an example, let's say I'm working on my biceps, right? I do a lot of bicep workouts. After a while, let's say I started on 20 kg. Okay, after a while, I take a period, I rest, etc. Now I'm able to do, let's say I was able to do 6 reps, now I'm able to do 8 reps. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I've increased the level of what? Of difficulty. And my muscles are now able to sustain it because they've now grown. Myelin goes around, which is essentially what myelin is. It's a fatty substance, okay, that insulates nerves, fibers in the brain, allowing for the rapid transmission, all right, of electrical signals between neurons. So essentially, just to break that down, okay, it goes in, it's around your neurons to strengthen more neural connections. Okay. Around your muscles, again, you get the proteins, the muscle starts to become what? Stronger. Right? You build more muscle fibers. Why is this happening? Because again, we're strengthening the neuron the connections in the brain with this part. So essentially, just to break it down to you, your muscle is telling your whole body there's a lot of problems here and we don't have the strength, right? This is overstressed, it's overworked. So your body sends resources over there to what? To build it to be stronger, to help it recover when you rest, which allows it becomes stronger, which allows more stress to be able to what? Be put on it. Does that make sense?
So we've basically created this system, and this is for normal people language now. We're creating this muscle, right? And because it's been put under a lot of pressure, your body's like, okay, well, I don't know what this guy wants to do. Let me build a system for when he comes back to do the same thing, the stress tolerance is higher.
Yeah, just to even repair it, right?
Okay.
So for that same thing, it needs to be repaired. So for that thing, we need to build strength, because if it happens again, we need to be able to what? Carry it, to be able to sustain it, to be able to lift it, etc.
But after you repair it, does it become stronger or just stays the same?
Stronger, of course.
Okay.
All right, stronger. So that's the point. You get stronger and it grows. Stress plus rest equals growth. When you take stress and you minus growth, so there's no growth in the equation, you get burnout. Does that make sense?
So you're basically saying as well that mental strength, cognitive strength is also a biological thing. It's not just like, no, this guy's just mentally. It's actually physically. Allah has created in a way where your mind physically creates neurons and adapts in a way to
100%.
manage
And
stress.
this is when you look at the whole concept of it Islamically even. When Allah says, إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا, right? It shows a direct reflection of this. That after hardship comes ease, and then hardship is going to come again, and then ease. Meaning what? The only way to be able to become strong, like let's say you deal with a financial issue. The first time it's very tough on you, right? But if you're patient, you solve it, then you have like this break period, you go through the same issue again. You're not as weak mentally, you're not as susceptible to stress. You don't become as stressed from it as you did the first time, because you've been through this before. Does that make sense? So it's important that although you do stress yourself, or you stress your body by working, you stress yourself, it's the level of stress is important, right? So you don't just go to the gym and straight away lift 100 kg to put stress. Stress should be at a point where it's higher than what you perceive as possible, but not what you think is impossible. Because we're breaking it in stages. Because eventually that thing starts to become easy, and then the next thing starts to become easy. Does that make sense? But you never want to go for something that's like, yeah, that's beyond. Meaning, if you time it, understand your focus. Let's say genuinely you can only focus for 30 minutes. That's your max, right? So the next day, aim for 40 minutes.
Yeah, but what if someone has ADHD?
Okay, perfect. Let's talk about ADHD, because I genuinely love this topic, right? When you look at ADHD, okay, we have to understand that ADHD is essentially attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, right? It's a condition that essentially causes symptoms like inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. They tend to act a lot on impulse, right? When it presents challenges, it also brings unique strengths, right? So the advantages of ADHD, you have to realize, everyone talks about ADHD of being a bad thing. If you know how to use it, again, it's not a bad thing, right? So creativity and hyperfocus. Individuals with ADHD, they're actually able to exhibit far levels of creativity, far more creative. And their ability to like focus on a task that they're passionate about is a lot higher than the average person, which can actually drive innovation, productivity, and entrepreneurial ventures, right? So when you look at entrepreneurs like, even Richard Branson, etc., they've actually spoken on how traits like ADHD, such as can improve things like creative thinking, risk taking, have led their businesses to great success. Because of those things, because of having that ADHD ability. And I can tell you it's the same thing, right? I was, told I have ADHD, right? But again, it's about understanding it. How does it work? And using it, actually choosing to see it as a good thing rather than a bad thing. And straight away, as soon as you choose to see it as a good thing rather than a bad thing, the way ADHD works on your mind completely changes as well. Completely changes. There's evidence, and it's been scientifically proven, though choosing to see something as differently actually has actually changes the way your body perceives that thing. I'm going to give you an example, stress. When you go through a challenge, or when you go through stress, and again, this completely aligns with the Islamic standpoint. When you go through stress, by choosing to see it as a challenge or as a good thing, right, you actually produce a lot less cortisol. Does that make sense? It completely changes everything. SubhanAllah. Like, did you actually understand what I just said there? By just choosing to see, because you have DHEA, right? And then you have you have cortisol, right? So DHEA is essentially the thing that helps your brain grow, right? It's the thing that helps your brain grow when you're under stress. Right? So ideally, the goal here is to release more DHEA when we're stressed than cortisol. Because cortisol is the thing that, just damages us. It's the stress levels. But DHEA is what allows the brain to actually grow from the from the stress. You with me? All right? So if you choose to see stress as like a challenge or as a good thing, you actually release more DHEA than cortisol, which allows your brain to actually recover and grow from the stress than the average person who's just burnt out when he gets stressed. So first of all, you need to see that every time I'm stressed, okay, this is actually a challenge. It's a chance to become greater. It's a chance to be closer to Allah. It's normal. Allah's going to test me. And that's what they say. The ulama say what? When you're tested, see it as a fursa, as an opportunity, as a challenge to get closer to Allah. And that changes genetically. Right? Wow. Actually, how your brain works, how much of which hormone is released changes based off of your simple approach to viewing a problem.
Wow, that's crazy. I don't even cap. Okay, now you see when you're mentioning all these things about stress and focus and this and that. First of all, you mentioned there's ADHD and you can actually you can have advantages towards that. Well, you also mentioned in many podcasts, and I think this is the time to kind of go a little bit deeper into it. Inshallah, we'll dedicate a whole podcast to it. But you also mentioned that a lot of the people that claim they have ADHD or have been told they have ADHD don't actually have ADHD.
Yeah, you have ADT, which is attention deficit trait, right? Which is actually comes from people actually just, that's self-inflicted, right? A lot of times people don't have ADHD, they were just told they had ADHD, and they were made to view ADHD as a bad thing. If you start to view ADHD as a good thing, like I said, everything changes. ADT is, again, self-inflicted. It's due to what? You're overstimulated, loads of things are happening, and now you think you have ADHD. Majority of people don't. If you scroll for social media for hours, like that's a lot of the time, that's self-inflicted. The reason you have attention deficit, trait is because what? You did all of these different things that destroyed your attention span and your focus that led you to have it. It doesn't mean you have ADHD. ADHD is genetic. It's just how you're built. It's how you're born. ADT is what? It's self-inflicted.
Okay. But see, when it comes to focus, everyone is familiar with dopamine being that thing. Is that actually what it is? What is dopamine? What's the function?
Okay, so dopamine is essentially a neurotransmitter that plays a role in terms of your motivation, reward, memory, attention, and regulating like your body's movements, right? It's often the feel-good chemical. That's how a lot of people describe it, right? Because it contributes to the feeling of pleasure and satisfaction, okay? Now, dopamine and entrepreneurial drive. Let's talk about how dopamine links for entrepreneurs, okay? So high dopamine levels enhance motivation and the pursuit of goals, right? Which is actually crucial for entrepreneurs navigating uncertainties, the uncertainties of building a business. And you have the reward processing side, which is dopamine reinforces behavior that leads to reward, right? So to understand dopamine, it's not actually, a lot of people think dopamine is the reward. It's actually the chase. Right? This is super important to understand. Dopamine is you chasing that reward. It's not necessarily the reward itself, getting the reward itself, it's the chase. So it's not necessarily whether you win the blackjack or not that increases dopamine. It's the, am I going to win or not? Just that path. Does that make sense?
So we talk a lot about discipline as well and being one of those things where it's like, that's how you're going to get to the next level. But one of the main things that's going to make you want to get to that next level, want to push, it's dopamine. Because dopamine is the driving force that's gonna push you and give you that desire and give you that motivation to want to achieve and succeed. صح? But again, you're saying that because of overstimulation, we've actually played around with the dopamine levels in our brain. But we hear a lot about in the productivity space about like dopamine fasts or staying away from dopamine. Is that really a thing or?
Right, so it's not more so about fasting from dopamine. Like you can't, it's a flipping, part of you, like, right? You can't fast from dopamine. It's just more so controlled, right? Okay. And giving, not like, for example, right? Let me just give this perfect example. If you look at it, when I lift my phone, what causes me to lift my phone? It's the like, has someone texted me? Is there like a notification? Now, majority of the times, what do you realize? There's not a notification, right? It's simply what? The chase. It's the if. And we know eventually, a lot of the times, sometimes there is going to be notifications. So it's that like chase that excites us, that literally wants us to pick up our phone. If you look at Instagram, it's the same thing. It's not seeing a good reel that, let's say, makes you happy. I can't open Instagram right now because it's blocked on my phone half the time. But listen, pal, by the way. But when it's like, what's going to come next? Is it going to be a good reel or a bad reel? Is this going to be like something really interesting or not? Right? And that is why the when you look at they love to make it so that your feed is it's centered around you, right? Your feed is centered around you, so you're constantly looking for that next juicy reel.
I think you need to go into this a bit deeper because I think it's a big issue for entrepreneurs.
The what?
Dopamine specifically, how like the way social media has been created for you.
Yeah, social media has been created to throw us off. One thing people need to understand is like there's scientists, people who study the brain, the mind, how it works behind the smartphones, right? The smartphone companies, the tech companies, they employ them. These social media companies, they employ them to actually destroy your brain. That's why I say it's actually not good enough to have your phone around you. It should be completely out of sight and out of mind. Because as long as it's there, I still feel that feeling of what? Even if I'm focusing on my work, it's still in my mind of like, who's texting me? Who's texting me?
Okay, so
you're not completely focused. Even though you're not looking at your phone, your dopamine is still where? It's elsewhere. Whereas if you put it in a completely different room, you set a 90-minute task blocker, and you know you can't touch your phone for 90 minutes, your dopamine is actually peaked, your focus is here. Boom.
Now I see what you mean, because even myself, I'd say the majority of people would say that they understand dopamine to be the kind of the focus hormone, but reality, it's because you keep wanting to get that thing that's keeping you distracted from what deep work, because what you're just all the time your mind is trying to get dopamine rather than getting into deep work. So
yeah, the problem is like dopamine is sort of like your motivation currency.
Okay.
Is what you have to understand. It's what drives you to take action. It's what drives you to pursue your goals. But here's the problem. Most people actually have broken dopamine systems. All right. Every time you scroll through Instagram, like we mentioned, WhatsApp or binge watch Netflix, you're training your brain to need constant stimulation. That kills your ability because it's constant. Right? It's quick. But when you need to focus on deep work, that can get difficult, right? So the solution isn't necessarily grinding harder, etc. The solution is dopamine control. You have to retrain your brain to get motivation from meaningful work rather than cheap distractions, right? So this is why dopamine, control is so important. Cut out social media, for example, in the morning, right? Stop checking your phone and notifications or your emails every 10 minutes, right? I always say for majority of apps, I've just gone ahead and turned off notifications. Number one, because I don't like the stimulation, and I like to let my mind know even if you open your phone for 3 seconds, there's going to be nothing there, right? So it's super important. Again, train your brain to get dopamine from deep work and progress, right? Instead of just these quick hits.
Yeah.
These quick.
You've talked about before, and I think maybe we can talk about this podcast, overstimulation, when it comes to specifically dopamine and stuff like that. Because again, if you're all the time, you're just giving yourself instant gratification, instant gratification all the time. You mentioned, right, when it comes to dopamine kind of detoxing or dopamine control, you're saying to cut out kind of social media scrolling in the morning. Is that because like your body wants it? So if you're pushing that away from yourself, is this kind of like a form of neuroplasticity like you were talking about before? Say that again?
Say that again?
Okay. You're trying to push away from this?
No. I had to focus on something.
Okay, cool.
See, this is what I mean. You can't multitask.
Okay. So when we're talking about focus, right? When someone's struggling to focus, it's not necessarily because they're lazy, but it's because they've actually trained their mind for instant dopamine. And we've talked about even, for example, because I used to have a bad habit of just watching everything in 2x. I'm like, okay, but then you're like, well, in real life, you can't slow people down.
Yeah, it actually builds a bad habit of not being able to focus on things. When you constantly, you know why we like to watch things in 2x? Because again, we want that hit quickly. We can't stand to actually just listen. It's like someone's telling a story. You can tell the people, by the way, just tell a story in a room. You can tell the people who are so super overstimulated and they love their quick hits and dopamine. You tell the story, okay, but where's the key part? Where's the key part? Come on, yeah, but where's,
Yeah. Sorry.
Now, sometimes it's, this guy's wasting my time, just to get to the moral of the story. But sometimes, again, when you genuinely can't focus, again, it's because of overstimulation. You see, they struggle to actually be in classes. They struggle to, take courses. Their minds are in different places, or they're multitasking a lot because, again, they're just looking for those quick hits. ineffective.
And they have too many things kind of going on in their lives. And I'm going to go into now kind of deep work and periodization, because they're very closely linked. Because you talked about, like, for example, when you're working, you have a deep work session, then you have a rest period. When you have a rest period, a lot of the time, what do? They pull out their phone, social media, and then they get back to work. So if we can talk about kind of how you can actually periodize the way that you work in terms of working and resting efficiently.
Yeah, if you look at periodization, I've talked about it so many times. It's a concept I love, right? And I really, really believe in. And I believe Allah has created us to be aligned with this, path, right? Periodization is a concept that actually comes from athletic training, right? Involves like cycling through periods of high demand and recovery to optimize performance and also prevent burnout or overexhaustion, right? So if you look at it, entrepreneurial periodization strategies would be like, for example, work sprints. So implementing a focus period. Like, this is where I say do the 90-minute focused work. For 90 minutes, just focus on the work. Every distraction is away from you, right? And this is where, again, I say everything that could possibly distract you is out of sight and out of mind. Only thing you can do is what you're supposed to do. For 90 minutes, you just focus on that, right? And that allows you to what? Have a short break, right? A short break to maintain that high productivity without overwhelming the brain. So it's like we just focused on a task. And now I always say, make it very clear what you want to get done in those 90 minutes, right? Once there's clarity around what you want to get done, just set a timer, 90 minutes. Right? Again, so your brain doesn't think what time it is. It's going to ring when it's time over, and just work. That's how you get into a flow state. You're going to get to a state of total immersion where you even forget the concept of time. It comes in at peaks about 20, 30 minutes in, right? When you're in this deep flow state. No notification, no one should talk to you, no sound. Everything should be just locked in. You should be locked in. Trust me. Okay. Then the recovery phase is where you actually incorporate that regular recovery period into your work schedule. So after 20 minutes, like I will never do 2 meetings, right? But I will never do 3 meetings back to back. After 2 meetings, I have to have a rest period, right? Some sort of rest period. Because if not, I'm not going to be able to focus with the client, right? I'm not going to be able to work.
And when you say like 90 minutes and then you're taking a rest period, what is
about 20 minutes? It should be much shorter, right? About 20 minutes max.
20 minutes.
And
what should I do then?
20 minutes. Something not overstimulating. So just relaxing, not doing much. Something calming, but doesn't overstimulate the mind, like scrolling a lot. Maybe you can quickly have a nice, little light look through the WhatsApp, etc. But again, you don't want to scroll, right? You want to avoid scrolling to, again, keep the mind. The goal is to actually rest the mind here, not to stress it. So not looking to solve any problems during our recovery period, because again, that's why a lot of entrepreneurs can't get into deep work, because even when they take a break, they're still, putting out fires. That's one thing you want to avoid.
One of the things as well you mentioned a lot, and especially, again, we're talking about interconnected systems here, is dhikr. Dhikr actually really balances out the kind of dopamine, the focus, the stress levels, connection with Allah, too many things.
Dhikr is the Muslims' concept of mindfulness, right? But actually being able to become mindful. I remember I was talking to my sheikh, right? We were going through Al-Fawaid by Ibn al-Qayyim, right? One of the things that he mentions is the difference between the different types of Muslims. You have the ihsan, the muhsin, the which is the best form, right? Then you have the mu'min, then you have the Muslim, and al-baqi, right? So the point of what I'm trying to say is, when he talks about the muhsin, the thing he highlights and he points out about them is what? Their levels of focus are unmatched. Wow. And tadabbur. They're able to focus and really think about a topic, right? Allah mentions them, they listen to the Quran. And the evidence that of actually a muhsin is the ability to focus and to ponder on the verses of Allah, right? Because Allah mentions it in the Quran. When they hear the verses, right, they think they ponder. And that is actually one of the athar, one of the signs of like when you say athar, it's like the evidence is like something that comes from something, right? Signs of the fact that somebody is genuinely, like his qalb is ready, alive. Like his qalb is opened.
Alive.
Yes, it's alive, hayy, right? It's that he's actually able to think and to ponder.
His heart is open, he can...
Things can come inside.
But you're saying because there's a lot of friction in the way we live our lives that it's going to make it very
It's too much
difficult
distraction.
to take it in.
Right? We've taken the dunya as our main priority. So dhikr is that time again where you can ground yourself. And I said it, right? A believer, a Muslim who listens, who understands what he's saying when he's saying his adhkar, and he's focused on what he's saying, and he is conscious only about what he's saying, Allahu Akbar. His mind will start to open up. His barakah will open up. His day will open up. Everything will open up for him. Subhanallah Rabbil. Subhanallah Rabbil. Right? Subhanallah bihamdi. Subhanallah bihamdi. Just think of what you're saying. Subhanallah bihamdi. Subhanallah bihamdi. You're bringing back the focus. And you have to train it. People always tell me, like, I tried to focus for us, but you actually have to, again, it has to be trained, right? You need to build up until, like, you can do a stage. For me, genuinely, like, alhamdulillah, I can sit there for an hour and genuinely think about basically just one thing I want to think about. Just like, for example, like, just focus on my breathing for an hour. It has to be trained. In the beginning, I couldn't do it for like 7 minutes, 3 minutes without getting distracted. But you want to build it. And the more you do it, there's clear studies to prove that these guys are far more in emotional control. And when you look at the Prophet ﷺ, he used to spend time in seclusion. The Salaf used to spend time in seclusion as well. You look at this, everyone, all of them, from the greatest among them, when you study their lives, they always had a time where they spent in seclusion. This is the concept of mindfulness. Not in the way the kuffar teach it, but this is the concept of mindfulness for the Muslim. He should be mindful, just focus. Right?
Even remember, if anyone has watched the podcast with Fawaz and Salim Imran during the time, and he was like, just set a time and do nothing. And Ustad was like, I genuinely don't understand. And the majority of people watching this will be like, what do you mean do nothing? And just dhikr and just sit down and just reflect. Nothing. But the effects, especially when someone has like a very fast mind and he's just...
Bro, do you know how effective it is for the mind? Like, it's so effective for the mind, bro. Wallahi, it's so effective for the mind. And the reason I'm saying this is because I want people to genuinely try it. Every day. Quality is more than quantity, by the way. All right? So quantity is more than, let's say, the quality here, right? So we want to try to do every day, even if it's a small period, just get it done every single day. At least 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. Just really thinking, just calm, thinking about something. Like, so whether it's like a creation of Allah you want to ponder on, just like the ni'am Allah has placed in your life. And that's all you're allowed to focus your mind on. Sorry. All right? Just calm yourself down. You know, by the way, people who have this, they don't get stressed as easily. They know how to channel their emotions. So, for example, they become the observer within themselves, right? Very, very emotionally intelligent. So even when they can feel themselves becoming angry, they can just pass. They can feel anger coming in them. Just pass. Because he's so locked in with himself. He understands himself to that degree. And even me, when I go a couple of days without it, let's say I've missed it due to hecticness, life, whatever, I can start to feel the effects on my behavior and my personality. All right? I can start to feel I become impatient with people, etc. It's something I have to schedule time for every day. All right? It really, really, really helps. And I encourage everyone to do it, you know?
Yeah, so that point you made about kind of dhikr and just being able to just sit down and really train the mind. And I really want to emphasize on the fact that this is neuroplasticity. You're actually changing your mind. You're controlling your mind. Allah has created you in a way where you can physically change the way you do things, right? And that includes stress, right? But again, like you mentioned, stress isn't necessarily a bad thing. But how can we actually use stress for growth and without letting it? Because again, if you have too much stress, of course you're going to burn out. You're going to get stressed. You're going to get, well, obviously you're going to get stressed, but you're going to get tired. You're going to get overwhelmed. How does a person balance between actually getting a healthy amount of stress, which is good for us, and just using it for growth?
Beautiful question. Right? Stress in manageable doses can actually enhance your performance because it allows you to actually focus more and have more energy. When you look at it, the period in which you were most effective in your whole life, there was likely some level of stress. Stress helps you focus and it helps you gain more energy. It's about finding the right balance between like eustress and distress, right? Which is positive stress versus what? Negative stress.
Okay, so like literally all we're talking about here is being able to use your stress in the positive way and reducing kind of the negative effects that stress that comes with stress naturally. Right, and kind of what are some techniques that we can use then to do that?
So one effective technique is actually stress inoculation, right? So it's gradually exposing yourself to manageable stress to build resilience. Again, this is in the gym, right? It can, a lot of times it's physical exercises, challenging projects, or even like, for example, for some people, it could be public speaking, right? It depends, but it's how you want it to be is like finding a way in which you can actually do something that is slightly above your level of ability, your level of skill, so it keeps you engaged, right? But again, you're training the mind to become better. Like, for example, like I've said it a million times, I think all entrepreneurs should do some form of combat sport. Not to be a professional, etc., but because it pushes them, it trains them, right? In terms of their stress levels, etc., and their focus abilities. Like, I can promise you, because like in the gym, do you think about anything else when we're in the gym? Right, with the coach, do you think about any other problem in your life, any business? Nothing. Why? Because there's a level of stress that is where you need to focus. If it was an easy workout, just something I'd just be like, that's fine. You're more thinking about your survival, does that make sense? But it got to a stage where if it's a workout you believe I can't do that, then it's like, nah, I'm not bothering. So you want to keep it to a healthy balance where it's above your ability. Right? And you want to, again, jump between the two. So if you have a high stress workout, again, let it follow be light workouts as well. Does that make sense? Because again, rest and recovery, which is important, right? Mentally and physically.
And you get used to these things. And we've talked about before the amygdala and how kind of it creates neuroplasticity in the brain. So
Perfect. Beautiful point. I actually want to talk about the amygdala versus the prefrontal cortex, right? These are two part of the brains. Now, your prefrontal cortex, referred to as the PFC, is responsible for everything logic, making logical decisions, things done in a smart way, effective way, focus, energy, all of that is prefrontal cortex, right? Your amygdala is like your sort of like emotional side of the brain, right? The idea here is we want to train our prefrontal cortex to always be in control and our amygdala as little as possible. All right. So if you look at it, it's like, for example, if there's a lion, you're likely not going to think with logic. It's just fight or flight, right? It's just like, emotional response. It's very quick. It's very impulsive, right? Whereas the prefrontal cortex, it's more thought out. Now, here's a perfect example. There's two kinds of people in the gym. You can see the guy who actually works with his amygdala versus the guy who works with his prefrontal cortex. The guy who works with his prefrontal cortex, he sees that something is difficult, like an exercise is difficult. He acknowledges it's difficult. He takes time, and again, mindfulness, etc., is going to train you to be able to do this. He acknowledges like, yeah, this is hard. It's supposed to be hard. He keeps going. Whereas you see the guy, for example, who has his amygdala, it's like he does one, he's like, whoa, no. Stress is taking over. It's just, no, I'm not doing it. I can't. Does that make sense? Like, no. That's too much. Whereas the one who is more controlled, he uses his prefrontal cortex. He's like, it's painful. It's supposed to be painful. That's fine. That's what it trains. So again, stress in business. When your prefrontal cortex is at the head, it's like, it's normal. There's going to be challenges in business. It's part of the game. Let's keep going. Let's find the solution. Whereas the amygdala, you see them, I can't. I don't think business is for me. It's emotional. It's just, I don't think business is for me, blah, 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 blah. No, he's out. And again, you see the same thing, no matter what example, when Allah tests somebody in his life, what does the guy with the amygdala? Yes, this is the dunya. We're going to be tested. Sorry, with the prefrontal cortex and the control. We're going to be tested. It's particularly normal, right? It's fine. We're going to be tested. It's part of the game.
And even now that you mentioned even the Quran, the story of Musa alayhi salam, and if you look at from a young age, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him a lot of tests.
Yeah. Sorry guys, I just take the water. Here you go.
Right. Hydration.
It's because I talk too much.
That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought him through a lot of different tests And in the end, he told him that all of the tests that you were put through, all of the pressures that you were put through, was to prepare you for that final mission that you were going to go for, which was to go to Fir'aun and to Banu Israel and the trials and tribulations that they're
And
going
when
to
you
give him.
see it in that way, like we mentioned, your cortisol is much more reduced. And the hormone responsible for what? Actually growing your brain is produced a lot more.
And another example is just in terms of business as well. I meet a lot of business owners and they become very stressed when it comes to, like, for example, hiring and firing, especially when it's like there's an issue in the team and it's an uncomfortable discussion that they have to have, or even in families, like, I just can't do it. Like, and he knows that there's no other way other than to have the conversation. Or if it's a business partner, well, I need to have this discussion with my business partner, but I'm just scared. I just can't do it. Again, they become so stressed. But again, after the first time you do it, like, I'll give another example. One of the clients, he had a very bad relationship with his family. SubhanAllah. Very bad relationship with his family. And I was like, well, you're just gonna have to, first of all, apologize, because first of all, those are your parents. And yeah, he's like, oh, I haven't spoken to them in years and I don't know what they're gonna say and this and this and this and that. But he knew that there was no other option other than for him as the son to go to his mom and apologize. And subhanAllah, after that day, he was like, wallahi, it wasn't even as bad as I thought. And more, he was now starting to open up the door for other more difficult conversations with other people in his family, in his business. It's like this person was extremely scared to do anything of that nature a couple months ago, but he started to actually physically train his brain to being able to accept these more stressful conditions.
Yeah, I actually want to talk about something important you said there. And this is the importance of cognitive reframing, right? When you change the way you perceive a situation, it can actually transform negative stress into positive stress.
Okay.
We said you can't grow from negative stress. All right. But if you change the way you perceive it, it actually changes it in your mind as well. So, for example, if I view like, I don't know why I'm in the gym and I'm just getting hurt and nah, this is not good, versus, now this is good, my muscles are growing, this is good for me, I'm going to grow. It becomes positive stress rather than negative stress, right? So when you implement these changes, you can actually create a robust system for managing stress, turning it into a tool for what? For personal and professional growth. And if you look at it again, physical health is completely intertwined with stress management. People who are physically unhealthy, they will succumb a lot more to stress, right? So you can perceive stressful situations, right? So regular exercise, good food, balanced diet, adequate sleep, all these things contribute to your body's ability to be able to handle stress, right? Because nothing is off balance here, right? Does that make sense?
Okay, so now we've talked about kind of neuroplasticity and increasing little doses of stress in the brain. But again, as we mentioned before, the more stress that you put yourself through, the more rest and recovery that you need to have. So, okay, now we've talked about stress. How does a person efficiently recover, and why is it exactly important?
Recovery is often overlooked, right? But it's essential for high performance, right? Recovery actually allows your body, your mind, and everything to recharge and to repair without actually preventing burnout. So it allows you to make...
Without preventing burnout.
Without actually causing burnout. So it prevents burnout. And it allows you to maintain peak performance over the long term. It's not just about rest, right? It's about active recovery that enhances and betters your well-being. Does that make sense?
We talked about this in a podcast about burnout before. And you mentioned that kind of when it comes to recovery, it's not only about like, just taking out a spa a day, or it's like there's so many different components that need to also kind of have rest as well. So you mentioned social.
Yeah. So if you look at it, sleep is the cornerstone of recovery, right? But a lot of people think it's just sleep, right? It's during sleep that your body repairs tissues, right? It consolidates your memory and regulates your hormones, which is why you see people who sleep quite bad. Like even, for example, my mother, she's always had problems sleeping and her memory is laughable, right? She has very, very poor memory. She forgets things constantly and she always complains about it. But it goes back to what? Sleep. Because when you sleep effectively, that's what allows you to what? Maintain good, strong memory. Does that make sense?
No.
So then you have sleep. But active recovery, like I mentioned to you previously, is just as important. So it's like light exercises, stretching. So even the days where you're resting, you could do a light exercise, stretching as well in the morning, right? Or these different things, these different activities, etc., that promote actual blood flow and reduce muscle tension, but they don't cause stress, right? It's like sometimes, you're going on a walk. Like technically it's an element of stress, but it doesn't cause stress. It's more like recovery, allowing your muscles to open up, free up, etc. Mental recovery is actually reduces cognitive load. It promotes relaxation as well. So you have to learn things like again, doing slow time for dhikr as well is very, very beneficial. Deep breathing exercises, taking short walks can actually help you clear your mind, or really light jogs, right? It doesn't hurt. You could probably do it for a very long time. It's not more so for your physical, but it's more so just to stretch, open up your body, right? It's like a warm up at the beginning of training. It's not there to actually strain you. It's there to just open you up, all right? So, and emotional recovery, again, is important. So that's where it comes to managing your emotional states as well as maintaining your psychological being. Journaling, talking with people that you love, your mentors, people who are close to you, all of that allows you to replenish. Engaging in hobbies, right, that provide emotional release and balance. This is something I'm really about. Like people, sometimes I'll grab you and I'll just rant. Right? This is my way of emotional recovery, mentioning things. And again, it gives you that sort of mental clarity, right? And that allows you to emotionally release. You're not holding everything in. It's like, kind of like, yeah, bro, this is like nuts and etc. It's like, it's out. Right? So, as well as nutrition, it plays an important role. I don't know how many times I have to emphasize that there's clearly a relationship between what you put in your body and how your body performs, right? Consuming nutrient-dense food actually supports what? Your body's repair process, replenish energy, all of these things. When you consume food with high nutrients, it's going to be much more effective, right? Which is why I encourage people to eat fruit. A lot of these fruits, they have a lot of nutrients, especially these like tropical fruits, right? Very, very beneficial for your mind. They'll really help you. I don't go a day without eating, as you know, like for me, I say every meal must come with fruit. It's important. It gives you the nutrients your body needs. Hydration as well. Staying hydrated is key for maintaining focus, overall performance, etc. All of these things are important. So when you have a proper structured recovery routine, it can significantly increase your performance, right? And that actually ensures that you're not just working hard, but you're also giving your body the mind support it needs to get better from the work.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the biggest thing with entrepreneurs. They start to think that, you're recovering. Nah, I'm just a hustler, bro. I'm day-born hustler. But truth is, bro, they see recovery as a kind of like a form of weakness.
Yeah, okay. I suppose the best athletes in the world to ever do it are weak. All right. If you look at the athletes that have been able to last the longest, right? I'm talking LeBron James in basketball, Cristiano Ronaldo in football. You know why they've been able to last this long? They make it clear that we don't last this long because of how hard we train. We lasted this long because of how well we recover. There's a lot of emphasis on how they recover. That's what has allowed them.
Okay, so for us, let's now summarize all the different things. So we talked about recovery, replenishing, overstimulation, dopamine levels, focus levels, sleep. If you can give us a bit of a kind of a full, bit of a mini framework, you can say.
Okay.
Obviously, we have it all in Live by Design framework, but.
Okay, so the first thing I'd say is master your sleep and energy cycles, right? You really want to understand them. Try to sleep at the same time daily to reset your circadian rhythm, right? The body's internal clock. Work in 90-minute focus cycles as well with 20-minute recovery breaks to actually align yourself with your ultradian rhythm. Schedule high energy tasks when you're naturally most alert, right? So anything that requires, for me, which is, and for majority of people, it's going to be the morning. Schedule those to high energy tasks then, all right? Optimize your sleep environment. Make sure your bedroom is cool. Temperatures, again, a warm room will destroy your sleep as well, or have you feeling very lethargic in the morning. So make sure your bedroom is dark, cool, quiet. Invest in a quality mattress, pillow. Get some good sleep, right? Establish a pre-sleep routine as well. So you actually have to get ready to sleep. Does that make sense? To let your body know it's time to wind down. Monitor your sleep quality as well. Use some sleep trackers. You can get I actually forgot my weight today, but you get the point, okay? And again, another thing you can do is reset your dopamine system. Cut out social media and distractions in the morning, all right? Train your mind to get dopamine from deep work, workouts, salah. That's what you want to get the dopamine from. Fasting, dopamine, fasting 1 day a week, try your best to actually get away from all technology. I really do advise this, right? Implement times in a day where you just disconnect from your devices. Engage in things that you actually care about, meaningful, that require all active forms of engagement and creativity, like writing for me. I love writing. Practice, different areas of mindfulness, like in terms of just focusing on your breathing, having time where you disconnect, and set clear goals, right? That will actually allow you to have that long-term dopamine for the goals, right? Next one is align your business with your life and business with your biology. Now, how do we do this? Completely by the Live by Design framework, right? We help you optimize your physical system, remove all the friction in your life, and sync your work with your natural energy peaks. This is what we do bi'idhnillahi ta'ala within the Live by Design framework to actually give you a life that gives towards your business, right? Rather than giving a business that just makes your whole life, right? You gain a life that your business gives towards rather than making your life solely focused about your business, right? And this is an important thing that we all have to look out for, right? So if you're actually serious about fixing your energy, focus, or productivity, and you need a system that actually works, aligned by Quran and Sunnah, right? Then that's exactly what we do inside the Live by Design, right? We build you custom science-backed performance systems so you can actually operate at the highest level consistently bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, right? So imagine you wake up every day feeling fresh, energized, right? Ready to tackle your biggest challenge, clarity and purpose. And I actually asked entrepreneurs this. I said, I want you to remember a period in where you were most focused, you were executing at 100%. Imagine we could replicate that every single day. That's what we seek to do at the Live by Design, with the Live by Design framework, right? So don't leave all of those outdated habits, right? Those biological misalignments that hold you back, all this rubbish advice on the internet that's slowly killing you and sending you to the hospital. Forget all of them. And it's time to actually take a step to develop and design your life around your biology rather than against it, right? The choice is simple. Keep fighting your biology and stay stuck, or align with it and start dominating every area of your life. It's literally one of the two.
And I want people to realize with Live by Design, it's not just a program, it's not just a course. You're going to get a mentor, a partner that he's got hundreds of clients that he's done this with, that he's dedicated basically his time to observing you, the way you live your life, the way your deep workflows, your sleeping, all sorts of optimization, looking at your business, looking at your relationships, looking at your sleep schedules, your nutrition, your everything. It's holistic. You literally have to take in everything into consideration, because if you start to talk about, for example, what productivity and I'm doing this and this and that, let me use this tactic or Pomodoro or this, it doesn't work, because you're not taking all the other things into consideration. How many decisions have you made throughout the day? How much stress you have from your team? Your company is stressing you out. You've gotten, all these different tasks are being put onto you that shouldn't even be for you. If you don't take all these things into consideration, you just really can't function as a high performance individual. So if you're ready to change yourself, then sign up for the Live by Design framework. Assalamu alaikum.